Hi, and welcome to the Westway Man Cave for another edition of a talk through the Kilmarnock music scene. We are absolutely delighted to welcome a dear old friend of mine, the guitarist and one of the songwriters from the Trash Can Sinatras, Mr. John Douglas. Thanks very much for coming, John.
Pleasure.
Really appreciate you coming along today. We'll get Kirky to fire the questions.
John, your first musical memory?
First musical memory, I was born in 63, so probably around about 73, 74, I started listening to the radio, watching the telly, Top of the Pops. It'd probably be the kind of things like The Sweet. And first song I can remember hearing was the Nowhere Man, the Beatles. And I think it was a Sunday. For some reason, they showed the films on a Sunday afternoon, and I sort of fell in love with these wee guys jumping about and making a noise. But it's basically the sort of glam stuff, I suppose. It was on the telly.
And see when you were older and getting into music, what were your influences? What kind of stuff were you listening to?
When I first started buying records, it was probably 76. And I'd be like my brothers. It was mostly my brothers, my big brother's record collection I started listening to. And he had things like Alex Harvey, a live record, which I still love. And he had a kind of varied thing. He did a lot of good stuff. He had like Kraftwerk and Bob Dylan and Johnny Mitchell. And there was also like the Clancy Brothers records would be around the house. My mum and dad had a stereogram, a radiogram, one of these things that's got the radio in the front and then a wee turntable and then a bit where you put records. And that was like the Clancy Brothers. There was a couple of singles. The two singles were 90th Nervous Breakdown with the Rolling Stones and The Laughing Gnome. And then Ravel's Bolero as well. So it was kind of varied. But my big brother's record collection, most of the radio, to be honest, was where I first started really getting involved. And the punk thing was when that's when I started getting enough pocket money to buy a single or to buy an album, or even eventually to get the train up to Glasgow to see shows. So the radio about that time, and when I started buying records, it'd be things like The Jam and The Clash.
Good answer.
Would that be Radio 1 you were listening to, John?
Aye, and there was a thing called Street Sounds on Radio Scotland, I think, and Billy Sloan had a show. Yeah. And the Billy Sloan show was great because he'd always be talking about who was coming into Glasgow, who was coming up north. And Street Sounds, I think they played like the early, when labels started coming up in Scotland, they would be playing the early Scottish bands. But mostly it was John Peel and Kid Jensen and Janice Long, the kind of shows, the evening and nighttime shows. And a wee tape recorder thing, and I would put the radio and tape things. But I had a wee radio with like a stereo speaker. It was before Walkman and all that, Remember Walkman that was a real life-changing thing, getting a Walkman.
It was.
Things where you could walk about and have a soundtrack. That was pretty amazing. But a wee radio with a wee one-year thing. And listen, and you'd talk about it in school. Did you hear thingy on Peel last night? It was sort of big. Music was much more part of the mainstream culture, I think. Remember that?
Yep.
And you formed your first band with your brother.
Aye.
How did that come about? What kind of stuff were you playing?
Well,
what was your memories of that time?
Oh, when I was like 19 or 18, I went into London for a couple of years and I did various jobs, but I came back with my guitar. There's a story behind that, but I came back with a guitar, and my older brother had a guitar, and my younger brother was wanting to play drums. So he got it on HP or something, he got a drum kit. And my mum and dad worked in Ravens Park Academy in Irvine. And then my dad worked in the kind of woodwork department. And Ravens Park Academy is like it's a big building, and at the back there's a few classrooms, and then it's like a moor, and then there's a school playing field. So there's no real neighbours. And then Sunday, he would allow us to go into this class with the drum kit, and I'd got an amplifier as well, and just make a racket all day kind of thing. So we didn't really didn't learn any songs as such. We'd just be playing riffs, and that thing when you finish a song and you do the big loud ending for 5 minutes. That was the highlight, the big loud ending. And then eventually we just, made some things out of the wee riffs, and I would sing, and it was like loud and fast. Wasn't much. I can't imagine what it was sounding like. There's no tapes of it or anything. But it was just drums and guitar and singing. So I suppose it was a bit White Stripes-ish maybe back in the day. Only did one gig. And we did a gig in the Grange, which isn't there anymore, supporting the Dead Souls, who you might have heard of.
Was that Marston's band?
Aye, Keith's band, aye. Keith was brilliant.
He was a great, I loved his voice, he's great.
Yeah.
There a song called Mayanne, brilliant song, Dead Souls, before they became the big gun.
Oh, Dead Souls, they had one called Crucifixion. That was a big finish thing. But they were nice folks. All of them were nice folks.
They were great. Keith was brilliant.
And they gave us their first gig just because we wanted a gig. We said, of course we can do a gig. And after the show, after we played the gig, Keith was the first one to come up to me and say, you're good singer, can you stick at it? And it stuck with me. That was a big sort of thing for somebody to say. Because it's your first gig, you expect to be like, get no reaction or maybe even like booed or whatever. But it was, folk were enthusiastic. And after the show, that's when Craig, the main guy who was the main guy in Easter Parade, he came up to me and says, "You've not got a bass player, have you?" And I said, "No, I hadn't even thought about it." He says, "I'll do it." And he joined and things shifted after that and Easter Parade. But I often wonder if we'd have just did the two, what kind of racket that would have been eventually. But the fate intervened.
And see, you're going to give us a kind of insight into how Easter Parade came along. What's your memories of playing your early gigs with Easter Parade?
Well, it was songs. Craig had a bunch of songs. We might have learned one or two covers. I think we did a Dylan song and we did a Squeeze song in the sets. But mostly it was Craig's stuff. So I was really impressed. I didn't know anybody that wrote songs and didn't know how he did it. And some of them had kind of fancy chords, just versions of chords, which I've, I fell in love with that, and it opened the door to a whole other world of just what you could do with guitar. But songs was the main thing, and he had a bunch of them, and soon we were playing these songs, and it just became more his band as far as the writing.
Am I right in thinking that you had a song called Promised Land?
Aye.
I remember I met you one night in Glasgow,
right, and
we were talking about the Midnight Buskers are burning in Easter, and you said to me, the only thing I can remember about them was the song called Promised Land, because you said want to know.
Right,
that must have been 30 years ago we were talking about that.
That's wild.
It just popped into my head there. How did the Trash Can Sinatras come together?
Well, Easter Parade was kind of, you said earlier, how long did they go for? I think it might have been even like 3 years or something. It was a decent amount of time. And at some point, Craig, who was a sort of main songwriter, he went up to Edinburgh to go to university and get a wee bed sit. And I was kind of on the dole at the moment, and the dole was the thing back then, you could get housing benefit, and so I kind of went over there and got a wee room in the same place where the bed sits were. And the band was kind of on ice. There wasn't much gigging, but there was never any talk of it stopping. But I stayed in this bed sit with him, and I would come back to Irvine over a weekend, and I started hanging about the pubs, and there was a guy there. The Trash Cans had been going as a kind of drinking money band for a few guys. Paul Ford played the drums. I don't know who else was in them. There was, I think Davy Hughes might have been in them very early on. And it was like it started, I wasn't there at the beginnings of the Trash Cans. Trash Cans.
They were just a kind of covers band at the very beginning, weren't they?
Aye. And they started because Davy Hughes, who eventually joined, and Frank, and I think Paul Ford, they were on a youth opportunities scheme, and it was in an old school, and they had 3 months, and at the start of the 3 months, the teachers or whatever they were called, the lecturers, says, right, you need to do, this is an artistic thing, you need to spend 3 months focusing on something at the end of it, present what you've done, whether it's a sculpture or whatever. And they buggered about. And then they decided, because Davey could play guitar and sing, they said, we'll do a show at the end of the 3 months, or the month, whatever it was. I don't really remember. I wasn't there. And the show was Davey on his guitar, and there was some bins. So Paul, I think, had some big kitchen spoons, so he played the bins, and they called themselves the Trash Can Sinatras, because Davey knew the chords to the Lady as a Chant, and Frank sung it and changed all the words. So it was like a fun thing. So that's how the band name came about. And so those guys, maybe, there was loads of gigs around, and I think they got offered, do you want to come and play a gig? And Paul Ford was always sort of proactive. He says, I will do a gig. And they would learn a bunch of stuff and just go and get smashed and, just treat the show as the night out kind of thing. Material was just whatever anybody knew. They would just play it. And at some point, I met them in the pub and they said, do you want to come and do that? And I said, absolutely. And the next gig was doing Troon at it was like a big gym hall thing. And it was obviously at the end of there's a couple of Troon bands or bands who were doing there, and they were brilliant. There was a band before us that did a version of Life During Wartime, Talking Heads thing, and it was a big band, like 6 or 7 piece band, and the whole place was dancing, just all folk my age, like maybe a couple hundred folk, total riot. And we went on and did like Brand New Candlelight and various stuff. It's similar, people enjoyed it kind of thing. And I thought, this is a blast. This very different from Easter Parade, where it was songs and a wee bit like, you need to get it right and all that nonsense. So it was a total like freedom, just have a laugh, turn your guitar up, make a noise, and play some simple things that you enjoy. And eventually we did that, and I think it was Paul actually suggested we should do our own stuff here. Has anybody got in it? And I says, I've always got wee riffs and wee things, and we'd asked Paul Livingston to join at that point because he was obviously the best guitar player. We'd only seen him playing a gig, but it wasn't me that clocked it. Frank clocked it. Said he's good. So he joined, and we just had a wee afternoon up in Frank's. He stayed in Buttery Hill in his bedroom, and just sat. And somebody says, "What have you got?" And I played a wee thing, and Paul reacted, "Oh, that's great. I've got this other wee thing." And as soon as sort of enthusiasm arrives, things happen. And it was a kind of gig. It was a kind of thing where. They were all people that, when you were in their presence, you upped your game. Mm-hmm. Frank and Paul, if they were there and they wanted me to show them something, I'd make sure it was good. I wouldn't kind of mess about. And I think we all felt that. We're all kind of...
And most folk in Kilmarnock would have seen you when you were playing like at the Woodstock and the Labour Club and that. What's your memories of the early gigs playing in Kilmarnock?
They were the first shows. They were the first shows that we'd left town to go. It's not a million miles away, but it's a million miles away at the time. Mm-hmm. And quite a different sort of music scene, I'd say, between Irvine and Kilmarnock. But it was welcoming, to get the gig in the first place, and to be playing our own songs. It was like we had a bit of fire in our belly. We kind of knew what we were doing was good. We would make wee tapes, and I'd end up listening to the tapes more than the radio. The sounds we were making together were the kind of music I really wanted to hear. Guitars being sort of melodic and good words and not great singing. It was like, this is brilliant. So when we were coming here, we had a bit of confidence about us. We weren't, what's the word? We weren't arrogant or anything, but we knew if folk were listening that they'd notice that that's all right. There's a bit of something in it. And
in 1987, you signed to Go Discs. How long had the band been together? And how did the signing to Go Discs come about?
Well, there was a few sort of lineup issues early on. Paul left, the drummer. I think we had a few. My brother Paul was in us for a wee while. Was there another drummer? There's another drummer called Fergus that did a show. There was basically a
Fergus Henderson.
He played
the Fergus player.
He rehearsed with us. I think he may have done a gig. There's another guy called Peter Dunlop. I don't know if you remember Peter Dunlop. He was a bit more, probably too good. He'd be playing in club bands. I would have a regular gig. He wasn't like an amateur that's struggling. He knew how to play. And we rehearsed with him, and then we had a gig in, I think it was Kilmarnock or somewhere. And we showed up in the afternoon and we started sound checking. It was all right stuff. We're making a racket, sound checking. The woman comes in and goes, "Right, that's it, boys. There's your money. Never mind playing the night. See you later." So she paid us. So we were kind of happy and went through. So that was Peter's gig with the band. We never got to play at night. And what was I saying? We got a settled lineup, and all through this we'd been demoing songs. And Frank and Paul, I think Frank, because Eddie had, made records, he knew that was a possibility in life. And because Frank was like a kind of warrior leader at the time. He would no, we're making records. Let's go and talk to them as if you're lucky to be talking to us, kind of thing. He had a good attitude about the worth of what we were about. And so he ended up sending stuff off to various labels. I think they might have been doing, him and Paul, they'd sent stuff off and various people said, if you're popping by, come in and say hello. And they went in to various labels, and one of them was Go Discs. And there was a fellow called Simon that worked there who was in the A&R department. He took a shine to the music, took a shine to Paul and Frank. And he was doing tour managing or something for a band called the Lilac Time, and they did some dates in Scotland. He says, "I'll get you some supports with those guys, and get to see what you like live, that kind of thing. We played Fat Sam's in Dundee. We played somewhere in Edinburgh. I don't think we played Glasgow, and they were lovely to us. The Lilac Town guys, very friendly and supportive, and they checked out our set and were very kind of enthusiastic about what we were doing. And we played live a few times. Next thing, there was a bunch of back then, if one label was interested, the other ones would sort of sniff about and try and get in on something early. But they were very genuine, and we liked the label Go Discs. It seemed it was, even though it was a major label, it didn't look that way. It was Billy Bragg's label, and he's still a bit of a hero of mine, Billy Bragg. And they just seemed to have a different attitude. It was more about. Then they said to us, "We'll give you time." We realised we didn't have hundreds of songs. We said it'll take us maybe a year or so to get our shit together and make a record. And they sort of stuck with us for a few years until we had enough songs that we're happy with to make the first album. But that was it. It was just Simon was there and he liked us, and then they saw us live. He liked us, and his boss really liked the guy on the label, liked the stuff, and that was it.
And what's your memories of making the album Cake, your first album?
It was kind of hazy. It's a long time ago. I do remember that we were struggling for songs. Not struggling, but that was when we got a deal. In fact, even before we got a deal, when we first started writing songs together and we realised we'd worth, that was all we did. None of us are married or kids or even girlfriends at the time. So we would just do that. We had a place to go and rehearse. And every day or every time we could, we'd just play. And if we weren't playing, we'd be writing. If we weren't writing, we'd be in the pub talking about it. And so making the first record was very much a continuation of that. We go to the studio. That was a big thing. Frank had, and through all this period where we were just writing songs, Frank had I think it might have been even before I met him. It was before I met him. He'd went over to Kilmarnock. He heard there was a recording studio and chatted to us. Says, can I do stuff? I want to know how they make these things and records. And the guys that owned it at the time, Spike and Clark Solly, George, there was probably a few other names. Papa was probably
and Papa would be there, yeah.
Aye. They were very of course, come in and make the tea, and then I think it would be probably Clark that would show him the desk and how to make things up. And he did a course. They paid for a course. And he went into London, did a course in engineering, learned a few things. So we would go in, and when it was midnight and the studio wasn't being used, we would go in and make wee demos that we'd send to.
Is Larry around then?
I don't think so.
No.
I think that might have, maybe soon, maybe no long after that.
Yeah. Did he not play keyboards or something in one of your early tracks?
Very probably. I mean, there was a lot of drink.
Larry certainly won't remember.
No, I mean, we can eventually followed Larry into his habits, and so memories are a bit foggy. It's always good memories. But
Larry was such a hilarious guy. He was so funny. Brilliant guy.
Did you record on there as well?
Yeah, we recorded with Selling Approach, and I also played in a band with Larry.
Right, okay.
And Neil McIlvany after Southern Approach.
Okay, yeah.
And Larry was producing, we did quite a few tracks in there, and I just had so much fun. It was just hilarious. A mega talented guy.
Oh, it's brilliant.
He's just so talented. But
well, he helped us because we trusted him. The demos, it wasn't so much the demos. When we first started going in there with the record company money to record, he was just, obviously knew what he was doing. Mm-hmm. And he was with us all through to the second record with producers would come in, and we would sort of say, absolutely come producers, but while he's an engineer, he was a sort of comfort blanket in a way. Somebody we knew that knew us and knew what we meant.
Especially first album, the trust's a massive.
Absolutely. We're naive and didn't know how you make records. But everything we did with conviction. It's like, we want it this, we don't want it like that. And Frank was good. He kind of orchestrated a lot of the sort of sonics of it. We would be more like the chords and the music and the melodies and stuff. I'm not so much the melodies. So it took a wee while, sorry to answer your question. We went up north to Lewis. The guy that owned Gold Disc was a guy called Andy McDonald, and his folks were from Lewis. And when you're at home, we'd be trying to write songs, but life would be busy, and he said, why don't you go up there for a couple of weeks and just, isolate yourself and finish off this one, finish off that one, and do this and that. So we went up there, and we'd never been to the islands before. It was pretty amazing. I mean, it's a gorgeous place anyway. I don't know if you've been to Lewis. And it was rural. The house they had, it was like a cottage, middle of nowhere. You could see a church in the horizon, and that was it. And we would stock up on 70 shilling and just wait for selling there. And we came away with songs. We finished the song.
And everybody in the band writes. So how does the songwriting work?
Well, then we were all new to the game. It was like, how do you do this? And Frank was good at going, I'll take that. See that bit there? That's a verse. Let's do that. Right. And that bit there that you've got, Paul, that's a wee break. And see the thing that you've got, I'll use that as a chorus chord. And a lot of their stuff, it wasn't just strumming chords. There was always some sort of melody thing within the chord that would be, right, let's do that. So the sound became this thing of the melodic guitars. You know, very rarely just bashing away. There was always playing some sort of tune. And that would inspire, like, Frank would go away with that, and he'd get a bunch of lyric sheets from everybody as well as his own input. And he did the magic of making them into a song. And we all learned through that process of how you do it. It's all about confidence and somebody just pushing you into a way of, you know, even analysing a record. I would never think to analyse a record. And you go, if you analyse this one, that's a verse, chorus, middle eight thing. This one, it's just 5 verses in the chorus. This one, there's like verse, middle eight, pre-chorus, chorus, verse, second chorus is different words. And then the third chorus, and that's back to the normal words. And you started to listen to music in a whole other way. You're looking at for the mechanics of it, and then you realise, Christ, there's what's it called? Make it easy on yourself with Walker Brothers. There's the verse, chorus, and verse, and then it goes to this other bit. But the other bit is just the chorus with different words, and then does the chorus again with the normal words. But you never think about it. When you analyse it, go, that's just the double chorus. But the first one's got different words. It becomes this place where it's like, oh, this is interesting. It's not just...
It breaks the song up. You don't realise it as doing that until you think about it.
Oh, yeah.
I've always found Frank really focused. Talking to him. We played with you guys a lot with Southern Approach. I play a lot of them. We were playing Airway a few times and somewhere else.
Right,
because Frank used to phone me up and say, any gigs coming up? And I say, yeah. Because obviously Ronnie and Paul are cousins, so we kind of...
Yeah, and there was a link.
That's a link with you guys pretty well. I'm always liked playing you, but then I got to the stage where you're good. These guys are far better than us. We've got it off but Frank, I'll chat before gigs or after gigs and just so focused and it was really interesting. And you could tell, I mean, you know, you could really tell that you guys were going to do something. And I remember after you get signed, I said, how did you do it? How did you get, apart from the really good, how did you do it? I just pestered people.
Yeah.
I just pestered people.
Yeah, Frank was a bit of a... He was a bit of a warrior back then when I was back. He'd he was driven. He had a full tank of petrol, and which was the music and the sort of solidity of the people. You know, I mentioned earlier there was a wee bit of just line up things, and it was all, when I think back, it was just looking for a chemistry where we were all right with each other. And knowing that once we get, knowing that we were going to be around for a wee while, you know, that somehow that was known back then, and we knew we had to be, we had to get on with each other on a real, of course, basic level, you know.
I remember going down to Erie, so you about mid to 86 or so, I don't know, but you're playing, I think it was what became Harley's or something.
Right,
aye. Crowd there come down. And it was a really, really nice song. I can't remember what the song, don't ask me what the song was, but we were just kind of watching. I think me and Ronnie come down and a few other guys from Kilmarnock. Folk were talking, you know, chatting away, and it wasn't a loud song. And folk were talking, and Frank, right in the middle of this beautiful, like, really beautiful vocal he was doing, he just went, listen! Everyone just stopped and looked at him. And I thought, oh, that's class. That is brilliant. That's right, it was just brilliant. And then on the crowd were like, okay. Do you know what I mean? And he was right.
Absolutely.
You know, and I was getting annoyed because folk were talking, you're like, come to see the band? Well, that was so good.
I used to lie on a bed of nails. It was one of my favorite things in the world, and it would take me away from myself. Ways to change the pain to something else. I can't find
And then you went to America, the band went to America for the first time, and the kind of college radio, they really kind of took the band to heart. Tell us about your first trip to America.
It was a bit, we're nerve-wracking. We'd done, our first record had been out everywhere, and before it came out, we'd done wee tours, you know, like small pubs, the circuit at the time, King Tut's in Glasgow probably, and we'd be up north. Did tours of the Highlands, just kind of getting our chops together, because we'd done gigs round about here, but we were only a confident, you know, live thing, and so the more we could play, the better. We knew that we had to go and make sure we were all right. Stephen had like learned to play the drums to join the band. It wasn't like a drummer.
Oh, see, you know, so it wasn't a drummer.
No, he was just one of the gang that we were at the time. It's like, you should get this right. Chip in, we'll get him the kit, and he'll learn to play. And he did. He went away, and next thing you know, he's great.
Oh, he's a fantastic drummer.
It was natural, you know. It was kind of, I suppose, what he wanted to do, but it made it with that nature of things. And we'd all learned how to play guitars ourselves. Paul had a few lessons, but everything was self-taught. So there wasn't. We weren't like a bunch of brilliant musicians going on the road. We knew we had to up our game, as you say, and get match fit. So we did all these wee gigs. And it was tough, you know, there's a couple of nice reviews and there's a couple of airplays, but every time you'd play out of town, you always felt like this is the jury, and you're the fucking, you know, you're on trial a wee bit, you know, so it's nervous, and you're young, and you're know, so Frank was great for that. He'd be like, right, come on, I'm going to take you, kind of thing. And but it was hard. Now and again, you'd get people coming up to you after the show going, I got the record, love it, and that would sort of make you, right, okay. And then we went back to the studio, and we're working for songs for the next record in between doing these gigs. We did support tours as well, which were kind of supposedly good, but it's a bit of a funny thing just to play for half an hour to a hall that's filling up. So all the gigging experiences were not like, you know, this is a magical thing. It was like, this is a struggle at times, you know. And then we get a phone call when we're in the studio saying your record's getting played in America. You need to go over there, and we went over for like a week or something, just to say hello to folk and do a wee gig in LA, and that was a bit of just a mind fuck. To be in a plane for that long was a mind fuck, and then just getting there was crazy. But then there was a tour booked for like February or something, and it shifted everything. Suddenly we were going into a hall to play, and it's full, and everybody knows the words to every song, and they're totally enthusiastic. It wasn't a trial anymore. It was just let's enjoy the music. And it was like, you know, whatever it was, 15 nights in a row of doing that. So we got good as a band because we were in a safe place. You know, people were kind of had embraced what we did, and it meant something to them, which is all you ever ask for. You know, you want your record to connect and mean something to somebody else. It's the bottom line. So to see it arrive was like a total relief. And as well as seeing the place, I mean, America, we'd all seen it in Kojak and Starsky. You know, it's Starsky. It's growing up on the telly, and it was just and musically, you know, to go and play all the towns that you'd heard of and some of the mythical sort of venues, it was like it made things real. This is brilliant. We're part of this thing that we're make records, and folk like them.
In 1993, you released I've Seen Everything, but I consider it your best album in that.
Okay.
But see, at that time, and because you were doing so well in America, that was the time the kind of grunge scene hit. Yeah. What's your views on that? That definitely hindered the band, didn't it?
Well, with hindsight, you sort of notice these things. At the time, it was, certainly the radio stations that played us and that type of thing suddenly shifted into playing things like Nirvana and Pearl Jam and all that kind of thing, which wasn't to my taste, to be honest. I did like Nirvana. I did songs, but a lot of it was just it wasn't to my taste. But it shifted gear. Everything shifted gear, and things change. And but to be honest, it was like it's only with hindsight. At the time, we went out and toured America while all that was going on, and it's, you know, it's still great. It's still people interested in the music and loved the record. Maybe the record companies would have been a bit more upset about it than us. And with hindsight, as I say, you realise that was just a sea change. But music's like that, and things just shift around. But we'd got an audience, you know, that we discovered were very loyal. you know, and it increased as the years went by. But people seem to be the kind of folk that if they liked us, they kind of were in there for the long haul. It didn't, you know, it wasn't like a flash in the pan thing. So as a band, we sort of, it was all right, you know. We survived it, but I know what you mean. It was a bit tough to take.
I mean, Kate was a brilliant debut album.
Oh,
But that was.
I think the Trash Can Sinatras are a kind of band who consistently release good albums. There's good songs. I like all the albums. And no many bands can do that. Even your U2s know that.
No.
We don't buy their albums anymore.
No,
I would say the only two bands that I consistently buy their albums is yourself and the Men Who Couldn't Hang. Okay, because they're consistently good albums.
Aye, I think there's two ways you can go if you're on a late, like the U2 route, where they'll have like 3 years ahead planned, and there'll be an album in the first year, and that whether you've got the songs or not, there'll be an album coming out, and there's a real logic to that. If you can, I think Coldplay did, a lot of bands do it, where it's like there's an album almost every year. If it's not, it's a year and a half. And it's constant. So for a record company, they're seeing you out working and it's regular. The audience don't have a time to sort of forget you. And it really works for your bands like U2 and all that. But they have to have at least 1 or 2 songs. Mm-hmm. And they kind of always do, those guys. They might know of 7 or 8.
It feels as if some of the albums are just kind of fillers.
You know, it gets them on the road and, you know, it keeps their enthusiasm going and all that stuff. But we were kind of the other way where, you know, we're not putting in until we're all happy with it. And that's brilliant because the records are great. And our thing was always about that, the records. You know, it's like, you're looking at putting something up there forever.
Mm-hmm. That's
so
true.
That's true. You know,
and you want it to be as best as it can be.
Aye. Yeah. And back in the day, you'd have deadlines with record companies, and that would be kind of good as well. It'd make you get things done on time. But the I've Seen Everything record, that's the first record we made after doing a good bit of touring. So we could really play. And we also, through the really playing thing, you also realised, see, they did really complex things we did in the first record where they're all, you know, everything's like there's a million ideas. Let's chill a bit in that and get a bit more, you know, space in the songs, because we know we're going to be playing them live now. And we kind of, a lot of that's just the band. There's some strings on it and there's a bit of keyboards, but mostly it's the band. So we worked up the songs just through being in a room. And I think after that, things might have shifted into other places. But there's something about that record that makes it stand out. And I think it's to do with that. I think it's
a fantastic album.
Are you in commission?
No.
No, you sure?
See,
joined me up before.
A personal point of view, I want to ken, I've got to ask you this question. What's it like to play in CBGBs and like Troubadour in Hollywood? I mean, iconic places. What's it like?
Well, at the time, you're just excited because you're playing. But when I think back on it, the main one I remember CBGBs.
I mean, you sold out the Troubadour.
We did, aye. Aye, that was kind of mad. It's like, there's recordings of it and it's folk were just gone nuts. It's our first time in town, and as I say, there was a bit of an appetite to see the band. You know, the record had been played mostly there, actually, mostly in California. So it became the place that welcomed us the most. And then we started the tour there, so we were off on a high, and it was the the Troubadour, which I loved. I'd known from like Tom Waits playing there back in the day, and there's a load of John Lennon. He had a big night out there when he was split up for Yoko. They had a big booze up there and ended up in a load of bother. And the place hasn't changed. It's like an old thing you'd see in a Western movie. It's all wood, tobacco stained, even though nobody's smoking in it anymore. And like a proper old school American venue. Any old venue I find fascinating. But to play somewhere like that was amazing. And then at the end of it, we kind of toured out of America, went to CBGBs, and that, as I say, that was, being an old punk, that was like, oh man, you're coming to the source.
This is a birthplace of punk rock.
Pretty much. And it was at the time, pretty seedy part of town. And there was like a place next door that was a crack house, and on the other side there was like a pizza place. And we obviously get told, don't go with that one. Paul ended up going up into this place looking for the pizza fucking thing. And they were like, no, guy, you're in the wrong place, man. You know. So you get set right. But the gig, the main thing I remember about the gig was like, we'd started doing some new songs. I think I did on some songs, the I've Seen Everything. So there was a bit of like excitement about we're putting new songs into the set. And it was a real multiracial crowd. And there was one of the new songs was a big ballady thing called Arms Fell, and we're playing that. And it was obviously new to all these punters, and I just looked out and there was just these people sort of hypnotised by what we were doing. And as I say, multiracial, and I just felt this is a beautiful place we're in here. And the dressing room where it was the toilet, you know, and it wasn't, you know, salubrious. Maybe I think the sound was good, but it was, you know, when you see these places and you look at it and it's, God, this is just like somewhere in, you know, Killie. it's probably a bit better, you know, but there's no airs and graces to it, but you know you're in some sort of hallowed ground when you're standing where the Ramones stood, the top heads, everybody, you know,
television.
Before anything, when they were just chanting around.
Did you get anyone celebrity-wise coming to see you?
Steve Jones came down again.
From the Pistols?
Aye.
Did he?
Aye.
My God.
He had a big sort of ankle-length black leather jacket, and he was in the dressing room just like nicking all this. Yes, Steve.
Did you get a chat with him? Or?
I didn't know. I just heard he'd been hanging out and drinking the rider.
Oh, bloody hell.
In 1999, you went to Japan. How were you received over there?
Very well. Again, the record had been played a lot on the radio, and again, that was a really. I mean, if you're going to, it's like going to another planet. Going to Japan, nothing's familiar. You know, it doesn't. The road signs, the street signs, everything. It's not in any language you sort of would know. The food's different. It seems as though the light was even different. And it's a big long flight, and you don't. When you go to Japan, you get off the plane, you sleep, and it's gig travel to the next city, gig and you're there for 7 days and then back. And with that flight, it takes you 2 or 3 days to get out of the flight, kind of thing. And then you're faced with all this unfamiliar stuff. It was brilliant. I mean, it's like walking into the future in a way, with a lot of the sort of technology you see around. And
it must be great going to these countries with your pals.
Aye.
You're essentially getting paid for enjoying yourself.
Well, aye. You're there for a reason, you know, just there to swan about and see things. And when I go on holiday now, I'm like, what am I doing? You know, I want to be doing something, you know, because I'm so used to travelling with a thing at the end of the night when you're playing and you're showing your wares and you're doing your thing.
Are the Japanese fans as crazy as they're made?
They're very
they're respectful.
Oh, super respectful. Right. Oh my God, you won't get a more respectful sort of culture anywhere. Yeah. Aye, just very, very respectful. They queue up, you know, you can tell they're dead excited. There's not a lot of chat goes on because the language barrier's pretty strong. But it's very obvious that they love the music. And I think that Scotland's got a bit of a connection. Scottish music certainly has always done well in Japan. Who knows why? There's many people theorised about
Best it. Rolls were
crazy. And things like the fan club and all that. All the sort of indie bands that did really well there, more than probably do anywhere else. I don't know why. Yeah. But it seems to be to do with melody. That's the only thing I find.
There you go, Westway All-Stars get a Japan boys.
Can you give an insight into kind of an average day? See, when you're on tour, what you can be getting up in the morning to...
You mean when the band was on the road? Aye. Just piling a van.
Big Ian Wilson driving.
Aye, big Ian Wilson driving. Aye, you know, you'd be in a red van. In England, certainly, we'd be stoating about in the red van, crammed into the back. They'd be very dangerous to put on music because somebody'd have an opinion about, well, that was right or that was wrong. But it was always good music kicking about. And then you just get the gig set up, play a thing. And in Britain, a lot of it was kind of stressful because there was, you know, it was sort of on trial in a lot of ways. But get to see a lot of the country. That was good. Get to see the differences and the accents and all that. And America's slightly different, bigger. When the first few tours, it was a tour bus, you know, the sort of classic tour bus, we'd be sleeping on it. And that was just, there's a glamour to that because, again, you've seen it on band documentaries of the day and all that. And there's an area at the back where there's the table and it's the sort of party area. So after a gig, you know, you're young and get smoking and drinking and whatever till 4 a.m. and go crash it and wake up somewhere else. There's certainly when you're young, there's a real glamour to that, and it's exciting. And even looking at the one day in America, no matter where you are, was always pretty special. But each day's, I mean, it's, if you wrote it down, it's probably a bit of Groundhog Day about it. Wake up, feel like shit, go and day this year sound check and play the show and chat to folk after it. That was always a good bit, chatting to folk after it, getting to know what.
Was that something you enjoyed doing?
Aye, it's much more encouraged now, you know, because the record, I don't know why, but I always really liked that, getting a blether with folk and finding out why, you know, what they liked about us and a bit about where you are and how things are for folks. And like Paul said that later on, he, you know, after 20, 30 years of doing this, he'd meet people after gigs and he'd say, what do you like? And he says, a lot of folk would say, I like jazz and I like you, and that's it. Or I like Bruce Springsteen and I like the Trash Cans, and that's it. Or I like U2 and the Trash Cans. It's always like, you've been with us for a while and it's hardcore, and I don't know why. It's hard to define, but there's something about what we do. People come back to hear what we're doing next.
Well, that's true. I mean, folks stick with you.
It's very humbling, you know. You got something that's, you know, it suits. You know, I'm a bit like that with artists as well. You know, I don't have that many that I love, but when I love them, I like pretty much everything.
How has music changed you?
Probably more confident. I mean, when I was young at school, I kind of drifted, quite invisible. Didn't really have any conviction about what I wanted to do. All I knew, like when I got to like 13 or 14, was I loved music. But I used to be able to sit in a classroom and I'd get, in my mind, I would get Setting Suns, put it on and put the needle down, and I'd listen to the whole thing and then turn it out and listen to the whole thing, and then the lessons of it. I'd have every note and every word in my head and play it through kind of in real time. So I was a bit of a dreamer. And at no point did I ever even think about playing music at that point. It wasn't until a few years later when somebody said to me, wake up, you should do stuff. But music changed me. It gave me confidence.
See, in 2004, you released Weightlifting, which is a great album, and you toured Canada and America. What's your memories of that time?
That was like a lovely time. We'd been through bankruptcy and not being able to work, basically. Couldn't do anything, couldn't play anything, couldn't play shows, couldn't bring out records.
That must have been a difficult time because you lost the studio and all.
Difficult's not the word. No. That doesn't really cover it. No, we kind of ran to the hills for a wee while. You know, financially, we'd lost the studio. That was like a real. It become, to be honest, things had shifted. Dance music had got really popular. The rehearsal rooms were kind of empty. There wasn't anybody coming to pay the money to work in a 24-track studio. Certainly the dance people weren't. They could do it on a laptop. Mm-hmm. So that side of things shifted. So there wasn't any money coming into the studio. And our tax advisors had been crap. You know, it's an old rock and roll story. You know, a lot of money comes in, so a lot of tax money has to be put aside. And if that's not done, and we're just making music and hoping somebody else is
dealing with it,
which is naive and all that. So I ended up having to go bankrupt for a good few years, and we moved. I was in London for a couple of years. I can't remember. Paul might have been in America for a wee bit, I'm not sure. But we kind of scattered. We didn't split or anything. We were always sending cassettes of this. I've got this, you know, and these things. We'd now and again we'd get together to rehearse or work on songs. I think Frank moved to Glasgow. We were all in various places, but the music was still working away despite all this stuff. And then Paul went to see the bankruptcy people in Ayr Square, and I said, he'll tell you this story even better than I will. Basically, he was in a room to plead his case to the tax people. He's like, the tools of our trade have been taken from us, and we've been bankrupt for 5 or 6 years, and we're just a wee guys in a band. We left school and did this, you know, badly advised. And the guy he was speaking us to was like some laird. He said it tweed and all that on, and he was like, "I'm serious, young man," you know, that kind of thing. And as soon as he got the human picture, he just said, "Right, forget that, scratch these guys, they're not bankrupt anymore." And Paul changed everything by that meeting. Suddenly we could play. The next thing we got a call for our Japanese label. There was a band over there that wanted us to come over and play some shows. So we started rehearsing, and And we looked at all this material we collected over these years, and a lot of it we thought, this is great. We made it when we made a record, and it was a record that sort of was full of that feeling of back to the good times musically.
I actually came and seen you at the ABC. It was one of the first nights that the ABC was open.
You're still banging nails, isn't it?
It was Roddy Hart, yourselves, and Roddy Frame. That was a great night.
It was a lovely gig, a really lovely gig. Somebody's got a bit of footage in it somewhere. Aye, there was the stink of paint.
Roddy Hart has played with these.
Oh, he came to America.
I met you at a gig it was in the ABC.
Right.
It was a Roddy Hart gig. He was playing down the stairs in the ABC 2. You and Frank were at the bar. With a wee blather.
Roddy's a lovely guy. He was, again, just dead enthusiastic about the band, and we asked him to come and support us on a tour, probably around about the weight off the time. And one of the reasons we asked is because he could play keys, so he could do his set, and then he could join us for the keys, because there was quite a bit of that on the record. That was a lovely tour. All that time was like, it was like I think we toured America in the autumn, and when I think about that, it was just like an Indian summer kind of thing. I didn't really know it was coming, but suddenly things were lovely again, and it's good.
We do Roddy for a couple of gigs down.
That's right.
Down the Smashing It was just him and his keyboard.
That's great.
It was great. And is that the Ayrshire Music Live we did? He come down and played, and folk were just
He's a great songwriter.
Great
songwriter. I've got a couple of his albums in the house. You play solo gigs now. How do you find that?
Eventually I found it all right. It was a bit I was really nerve-wracking at the start. I don't know why I decided to. I've been playing with my wife for ages, for a long time.
Would you like to name her, just in case anybody doesn't know?
My wife's Eddie.
Eddie Reader.
She's a singer. I've been part of her band for a good long time now. And in her band is a guy called Boo Fjordine, who used to be in a band called The Bible. And he's got this solo career where he goes out with his guitar. And ever since I've known him, he did that. And I kind of was jealous of it, somebody that could show up with a guitar.
And he's a great songwriter, I know.
He is.
I've got The Bible's first album, a song called Crystal Palace. Great tune.
He's got a ton of them. There's few of them. But to have that ability to go into a little place and, entertain folk for whatever it is, an hour and a half, just with you and your guitar, I kind of admired, but I thought, that's not for me. I'd be too nerve-wracking to do that. I like writing songs. And then eventually, one day, I think there was a period where the news is awful, like about how everything's gone down the tubes with the money, that's going to be a nightmare. And I thought, how can I bring in some money? And I thought I could do that. I know I've never done it before, but I could get a go, and if I get good at it, then that's just me and my guitar, low overheads, make a few quid, bring it back to the house. Sounds kind of mercenary, but I mean, at the time, I just felt like I should fucking get up off my arse. Excuse my language.
No,
it's what you're good at.
We're all over 18 here.
You make money in it.
Aye, well, that's the thing. And so at the time, I realised this. There was a lassie called Jill Jackson. You might know her. Great. She was supporting Eddie at the time.
Aye.
Well, she's like Boo. She's got a healthy solo career of wandering about the countries with her guitar. And she was in the room because she was supporting Eddie, and I was saying, I was thinking of doing this. And she says, "Oh, are you thinking of doing that?" She says, "I've got 2 support slots coming up. I'm doing Greenock and I'm doing Irvine. Do you want to do them?" I said, "When are they?" She says, "Like a week's time." And I went, "Aye, okay." Deep into the deep end. She says, "What's your advice?" She said, Practice. I said, "Really?" She says, "I've been doing this for ages, and I guarantee before every time I go out, I'll go to a rehearsal room and I've sitting there for 3 or 4 hours going through everything, make sure I'm super, know the ins and outs of every tune." So I did that. I rehearsed a load of stuff. I had to choose trash can stuff that I could do justice to on the guitar, and I could feel all right singing. And it was nerve-wracking at Greenock. And then the next thing was Irvine, was my hometown. I was nerve-wracking as well. But through those 2 gigs, I realised there's some songs I thought would work that they didn't, and other things that I wasn't sure if they were all right. And the main thing I learned was that I enjoyed it, because I could blether. And I didn't know I'd enjoy blethering, but I liked, if I had a song that's coming up, I'd go, right, this is, I've set the scene for this kind of thing. And I got quite into that. And I went doing all right, and they wouldn't be booing or chucking things. It was all right. And I just, every time somebody said, "Do you want to do it?" I'd say yes. Yes was I'm still my kind of golden rule. Somebody asked to say, aye, it'll be fine.
I knew you really enjoyed doing it.
I love it, aye, it's good, aye. It's, and it brings in a few quid, it's no hunters, but I can go somewhere and be all right. And the folk, most of the times I'm playing where I can tell nobody's got a clue who I am. But by the end of the thing, they're going, oh, great, can I buy a CD? So it's whatever's happening, it's healthy. It's a good natural thing.
And see, back in the days, the Trash Can Sinatras played with you played Della Mitre at the Edinburgh Castle, didn't you?
Aye, we did a few days.
You did a tour with Prefab Sprout and all that. Who's your? I mean, you must have met loads of folk for the kind of music business. Who's your favourite band to party with?
Party with? Fucking hell. I don't know.
Beastie Boys.
I don't know if there's much partying going on. We probably party ourselves more than anything else. When we were supporting Prefab Sprout, there was a couple of the guys in the band, Martin on the bass and the drummer guy. They would, after the show, they'd sit with us with a few jars and have a blather, and then up the road because the gig's the next day. We toured a bit with them out with Giants, and they were lovely guys to hang about with. It's not really so much partying, it's just hanging about with them, and you can shoot the breeze. Who was the other one you mentioned?
Della Mitre.
Again, lovely folks. Justin's brilliant. I've met him a few. I've partied with him. He could be a trouble. We played a gig. I don't know if you'll mind me saying this. There was a gig up in Inverness. I'm pretty sure it was Inverness, where it was like one of these gigs where it was like the songs of somebody, and they'd have guest singers. Like Eddie was up there and Justin, the songs of Bob Dylan or something. I don't know. Everybody does a couple of songs, and there's a house band, and then at the end of the night, back to his hotel. And we get back to the hotel first, and there was this wedding party taking over the whole bar. It was like a farmer's wedding, a bit rowdy. And we managed to find a wee corner seat where obviously nobody could see us, and Justin walks in steaming and just looks around and goes, "Who the fuck are you?" where's my guy kind of thing. And it was somebody was going to lamp him, and then the staff going like, "Come on." But he's brave, or just but and also great company, great sort of knowledge of music, and that's the best thing when you sit and chat about music and records and songs to folk like that. You'd be there to the early hours, especially with Justin. He's a bit of a star, a bit of a master.
He didn't know where you all were.
Huh?
He didn't know where you all were.
No.
You could see he was always the last to know.
Oh, right, okay.
How long have you been holding that for?
Just when he said that, he's I'm here all week. We'll give him a quote.
John, what's your plans for the future?
Well, the Trash Cans have made a record with Paul Savage up for the Delgados up at Chem 19 Studios. We've just finished that. We're getting the artwork together. We're going to release it ourselves, form our own wee label, and the nature of the world these days, that's just seems a sensible thing to do. You keep a lot of your rights, and it means a bit of extra work and a bit of kind of outlay at the start, but it just seems wise to just become self-sufficient right now. And it's a great record. It's full guitars and tempo, and it's a bit like the process has been a bit like the weightlifting thing. It took a long time to get the songs sort of to a state where we liked them. Paul and Frank living in America has been a hindrance in a lot of ways. We can't get the five of us in a room. But the good side of it has been me, Davey and Stephen are here, and that's the kind of engine room of arranging, get the bass, the drums and a guitar. So we would go and rehearse with the ideas that we had, record that, send to Paul and Frank, and Frank would say maybe change the key to that and move that verse there or whatever. And Paul will have he'll put some guitar ideas down, and then he'd send it back, and we'd play his ideas through the thing, and we'd play along with his. So he's kind of in the room, and I'd be able to arrange stuff around about what he's doing, and so it worked. But it was slow, and it's no ideal. But for somehow through it all, we've made a record that sounds like a lot of it sounds like a band in a studio, a band in a room, just bashing it out. So it's good.
See, this next question is something I really want to ken. Somebody who's been there and done it, or what's been your musical highlight?
Well, things like that playing CBGBs and the stuff you grew up with, been in your life. I mean, I grew up with The Jam was a huge band for me. And we met Paul Weller once and he said, oh, you're Scottish band. Yeah, it's Scottish band. Orange Juice. And it sort of very brief chat. But then later on, our pal Wells had given him a mixtape to, he's gone on holiday to do a mixtape. And there was a song called The Safecracker on it. And he'd come back for his holidays and he phoned up to get the chords because he wanted to sit and learn that song. So I was like, that's a bit of a, a fella that I grew up, really, loving, and him wanting to play a song. That's a kind of major thing. But the main thing is always blessed still to be able to do it. The songs have connected with enough people for us still to carry on with not feeling like a bunch of idiots. You're doing it and there's people waiting to hear it and hopefully they'll enjoy it. That's the main thing. Still doing it.
We interviewed George for the No Men, and he said that the Trash Can Sinatras make his band look like a sellout. He's a stubborn band.
Aye. Yeah, but only through through good reason. As I say, you're looking at eternity when you make a record. You're in the same room as everybody else, whether it's Paul McCartney or whatever. You want to be great. You want to make it as great as you can. And if somebody's trying to hurry up, you're like, well, no, you hurry up. We're fine doing this kind of thing. If we could do it in a hurry, great. There is songs that they fire out very quickly, but there's other ones. There's something in there that has to be polished just right, or and you take your time. And some folk might say that's stubborn, but it's bloody minded. It is definitely.
You do what's best for you, though.
That's it. Aye, best for the music.
At your own pace.
Aye. And as I say, sometimes that's fast. We can. In the past, if a record company gave us a deadline to have such and such things finished, we generally would get it together. But that doesn't exist anymore so much. You have your own deadlines, and it seems to suit us. But again, it's adverse circumstances. A lot of us we're spread far and wide, so it's tough to keep it going. But we do it.
Final question, John. If you could do it all again, would you change anything?
No, I wouldn't change a thing. These are every day's a school day, as they say, and I don't feel any of it was wasted time. It's all been an education. Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
John Douglas.
John, thanks, mate.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.